Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're diving into something today I think a lot of you've probably experienced firsthand. It's about buying a car and why, even though, everything else seems to be moving online so smoothly, that experience of actually getting yourself a new car still feels kind of stuck in the past. We're going to be looking at a really interesting blog post today that digs into this and throws out this idea of digital dealerships, which I think is going to be a big deal in the coming years.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic. And what struck me right away in this blog post was this mismatch. We have these incredibly sophisticated cars coming out packed with tech, but then the process of actually buying one can often feel, I don't know, surprisingly old school.
It really is. Like, you go online, you're on the
Yep.
manufacturer's website, all excited, you're building your car, you're checking out all the options.
hmm
But then when you want to get down to the nitty-gritty, figuring out the financing, maybe negotiating a bit on the price, you hit this wall.
Absolutely. And that's where the blog post really hits on something important. It's not just like a personal annoyance, it's a real missed opportunity for the car companies. There's actual data in here suggesting that something like 60% of new car buyers would actually prefer to handle more of that buying process online.
Wow, 60%, that's huge. So it's not just a few tech-savvy people, it's a pretty big chunk of the market. And
Yeah.
that makes me wonder, what exactly do people want to do online? What does that more actually look like?
Well, the blog post breaks it down pretty clearly, and it's a pretty long list. Think about all the things that you typically associate with going to a dealership. It's things like actually understanding all the technical jargon, not just the basic features, but like what all the specs really mean.
Right, like, I can look at the horsepower number, but what does that actually translate to when I'm driving? That kind of thing.
Exactly. It's about being able to compare models side by side based on your own priorities, not just whatever the brochure happens to highlight.
Yeah, and let's not forget actually deciding which car to buy. That should be online too. Finding the best deals, figuring out what you can actually afford, comparing different financing options, insurance packages, all that stuff. And get this, they even want to be able to agree on the final price and trade in value online and even check their financing eligibility, all from their couch.
It makes sense, right? It's the level of control and transparency that people are just used to having in so many other parts of their lives. It's like,
Yeah.
why should buying a car be any different?
Exactly. So this brings us to this idea of the digital dealership, which it's more than just having a nice website, right? It's about creating that same level of expertise and trust that you hopefully get when you walk into an actual dealership, but making it all happen online.
And one thing I found really interesting in the blog post is how it breaks down the different types of customers who are interested in this. You've got like a third who are totally happy to do everything themselves, research online, and basically just click buy when they're ready. But then there's another third, a big chunk, who still want that human interaction, that reassurance, but they want to do it online. And that's where this digital dealership concept becomes really powerful, is like catering to those people who want the best of both worlds.
So it's not about saying goodbye to the physical dealerships entirely. It's about giving people a real, solid alternative if that's how they prefer to buy a car. And, there's a lot of benefits for the car companies too if they can get this right.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously, a happy customer is a good customer,
Right.
right? But beyond that, if you can make that online experience really smooth and enjoyable, you're going to see higher conversion rates, meaning more people actually buying cars. And that's going to boost sales both online and probably even at the physical dealerships, too.
Right, because even if they end up going to a dealership, maybe they're already further along in the process because they did a bunch of it online. And then there's this longer term benefit that the blog post talks about, building those direct relationships with customers. And instead of relying so much on the dealerships, they can start to learn more about the customers directly.
Yeah, and having that direct line of communication and access to all that data is going to be so valuable for car companies moving forward. But, the blog post then gets into why the online support systems we see now, like the contact centers, the chat bots, the simple live chats, they just aren't cutting it.
Yeah, it's like they were built for a different time, right?
hmm
When online car buying wasn't really a thing, and it was more about just getting people's contact info and sending them to a dealer.
Exactly. The focus was on efficiency, handling tons of basic inquiries as cheaply as possible. So you ended up with these generic contact centers, chatbots that could only answer a few simple questions, and live chats that were mostly there to capture leads.
Yeah, it was like, here's a little taste of what you could have, but now go talk to someone in person. And that's so frustrating for customers who actually want to, you know, dig in and understand their options online. They don't get the in-depth info they need, and it just ends up feeling like a dead end.
Right. And it's such a contrast to how people buy things online in other industries. You can research, compare, and buy really complex things entirely online these days. The car industry just hasn't caught up to that.
So the big question is, how do car companies actually build these better digital dealerships? And the blog post talks about a couple of different approaches they've tried.
Yeah, so initially some companies tried to do it all themselves. They tried building these internal teams to handle the whole e-commerce side of things, starting with some pilot programs.
But that seems like it would get really complicated really fast.
Oh, it definitely does. The blog post talks about how as soon as you try to scale that up across different brands within the same company, across different countries, and into different languages, it becomes a logistical nightmare.
And super expensive too, I imagine.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like trying to build this whole new division within a company that's already really complex. So the blog post suggests that outsourcing this to companies that specialize in this kind of thing might be a more realistic approach.
So basically, partnering with experts who already know how to do this well. But even then, building a real digital dealership is more than just hiring a bunch of call center agents, right?
Right. It's about having the right people with the right skills, using data and customer insights in a smart way, having solid processes in place, and of course, having the technology to support all of it.
It's like a whole ecosystem, not just a quick fix.
Yeah.
And the blog post actually lays out some really helpful questions that car companies should be asking any potential partners to make sure they're getting a real digital dealership and not just, a slightly fancier call center.
Yeah, like the first question is about having a framework. Does this partner have a way to assess where the car company is now, how mature their online stuff is, and then identify what's missing?
So it's like a roadmap for the whole journey, not just a one-off solution.
Exactly. And then they need to look at the people. Who are these agents who are going to be talking to customers? What kind of skills are they looking for? Are they going to get specific training on car sales and all the products?
Yeah, they need to know more than just the basics, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And the blog post even asks if those agents will go through the same training and exams that the people at the physical dealerships do. So it's about having that same level of expertise across the board.
That's really important. And then this one's interesting. Will these agents be certified to actually give advice and sell financing and insurance products? Because that's a big part of buying a car.
Right. And if they can handle that online legally and securely, it just makes the whole process so much smoother for the customer.
Totally. And then there are questions about how these agents are motivated. You know, are they rewarded for actually selling cars and keeping customers happy, not just for answering a certain number of calls?
Yeah, incentives matter. And then it gets into the data side of things. How do they use customer data to keep getting better, both for individual customers and for the whole digital dealership operation?
It's like using all that information to personalize the experience and keep improving.
Exactly. And then there's the question of scripts. Do they use them? How strict are they? How do they make sure those scripts don't sound robotic but still give accurate information?
Yeah, because you want it to feel like a real conversation, not like you're talking to a machine.
Exactly. Then it gets into the more practical stuff. Languages, operating hours, how they handle busy periods, where the agents are located. All those things matter for making sure the digital dealership is actually accessible and responsive.
Makes sense. And then lastly, it asks about the technology they use. You know, what tools do the agents have to access all the latest product information, and how is their performance tracked and improved?
So it's like the whole package. And the blog post makes it really clear. If a car company is serious about doing this right, they need to ask these tough questions. They need to make sure their partner really gets it, really understands how to build a digital dealership that's as good as the real thing.
It's about moving beyond just answering questions to actually guiding people through that whole journey of buying a car online, giving them the same level of support and expertise they'd get at a dealership.
Yeah, meeting those changing expectations and creating an experience that people actually enjoy,
Yeah.
Providing that in-depth info, making it convenient, and having real people there to help when needed.
So to wrap things up, we've seen that there's a real desire for a better online car buying experience.
Yeah.
The old ways just aren't working, and these digital dealerships have the potential to really change the game. But it's got to be done right, with the right people, processes, and tech. It's more than just putting a call center online.
It really is. It's about understanding how people want to buy cars today and building something that actually meets those needs.
So as you're listening to this, think about what this could mean for you as a car buyer. Could we actually be moving towards a future where you can find your next car, figure out the financing, and even agree on the price all from your home? And what happens to those physical dealerships? Lots to think about. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.